let's go. Let's kick it off. Let's do this.
And let's go.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do it.
Inaugural episode of Carney and Coach. My name's Steve Carney, and Greg here is Coach.
I am. What's up?
Not much, man. How's your day?
It's good. It's hot. It's raining, So that's
Right on.
yeah, that's summer in the South, right?
Right, that's right. So a little bit of background here. Greg and I have known each other for about 8-9 years? Is that
A
about right?
while. That sounds
A
good.
while.
Yep.
Yep. And our boys have been best friends since kindergarten. That's actually, when Greg and I also became best friends.
Right
And
on.
so,
Exactly. Yep.
and so, Greg moved away a couple years ago, and just I don't, not that we have lost touch, but every time Greg and I get together, we start commiserating about kid sports and just all the ins and outs, and just get real philosophical about it. And so we thought we would just get together and talk about youth athletics in America. I know Greg has a very interesting opinion as a coach and somebody who's seen the other side, and I'm a parent, and I've been living, as Greg likes to put it, in the trenches. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like my background. Greg, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, not really. I've been coaching, at a competitive level for probably close to 10 years. I do come at this from a perspective of coaching little guys and gals, all the way to very high level athletes in the St. Louis area. It's cool to see some of those athletes going on to bigger and better things as we speak, and thinking about the times that I was able to work with some of these really great athletes. Spent a lot of time in it. I think youth athletics in America is broken, to be honest. And I hope that what we can do in this podcast is, one, help parents navigate all of this, because I think it's really hard. And I think that there are slivers that are really good, but there's a lot of toxicity, right, in it. And so, hopefully we can bring some positivity and some freshness. And, if you're a parent out there who's maybe stressed out about the process, or, is trying to navigate all of this, maybe you and I, through our discussions, can provide some perspective and some help, and have some fun along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's spot on, man. As you were talking about, just helping parents kind of navigate a lot of this process. Just a real quick, today we're going to talk about tryouts, and so my son recently got through with baseball tryouts, real competitive 14U. It's real serious about now. And I just remember one of the tryouts, I was watching him at one point, and my heart was beating really fast, right? So you got to kind of step back a little bit and say, wait a minute, who's this really for, right? Is this for my son, or is this for me, right?
Exactly. Right.
And I'm not a baseball player, but he is. So that was a real eye-opening moment for me, as like kind of like we think about these things. Um, so yeah, so tryout. So there's a Facebook group that I belong to in and around the area, and I saw a real interesting post, and I thought that would be a great kind of kickoff, because a lot of tryouts is when kid sports, that's when they kick off, right? That's whenever they get into it. You may be going from recreational soccer, baseball, volleyball, whatever it may be, into that competitive kind of environment, and that's really kind of the funnel. And so the first thing I would say is, Greg, if I'm a new parent and my son or daughter says, "Hey, I want to play whatever. I want to play volleyball." What are some good tools that I could use to kind of maybe go find a tryout around my area? Any ideas there?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is that, as a parent, you do have to be proactive, right? You're gonna have to put a little bit of work into it. I'd like to think that there's some like tricks to the organization of it, but I mean, I'm sure you could speak to this now. There's tons of teams and tons of clubs and all that kind of stuff, and so it can be really hard. I think what I would say is, and we talked a little bit about this, a couple of weeks ago, but like, it's trying to have a little bit of that long-term perspective, and and not get too dorked up with this particular season, right? Um, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what do we say? Like most in America, kids get started in competitive sports around age 8.
Yeah, that's about
That's
right.
like the time when a lot of parents start to look at it. And then, if they're gonna play it to college and get that college scholarship, that's 18. So you're looking at 10 years, right? And so I think that having some perspective that it's a 10-year journey and like the decision that you're making right now is not going to make or break your athlete, I think might be helpful. But I know for me, I've always had to be proactive and looking for teams and looking for players and you always had to be proactive in youth athletics, and I think the more proactive you can be as a parent, I think then the better prepared you're going to be to try to find the best environment for your child, so if you do
Mm.
3 tryouts, it's going to be better than doing one. But overall, I wouldn't get too dorked up about it. Like it's fine, like you're going to learn by doing, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially at that early age, like you said, 8 or 9, I think taking that 10-year perspective that you talked about, if your son or daughter doesn't make a competitive team the first year, it's okay.
It's fine. I mean,
It's
it's
okay,
probably
right?
better. I mean, it's probably
Right.
better, right?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
I think the thing that one of the realizations that I had early on was my son actually made a pretty competitive baseball team at a young age. And what we fell into was a place where, he was just passionate about baseball. He liked it. The coaching staff was actually like really knowledgeable about baseball, but there were a lot of good boys on that team. And my son was more of a developmental player at the time, and he didn't get a chance to get out on the field, right? And so he didn't have reps. And so whenever he did get reps, he was a little nervous. He wasn't quite sure of himself. So like we eventually left that team and we went where he could, and as I put it, he could make made a lot of mistakes. Like that's what he needed to do. He needed to go somewhere where he had 1,000 reps and maybe 500 errors, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so that first year, as you put it, is not make or break. And maybe the second year, maybe that's not make or. I've seen some rec teams that are run like that are run like a club team. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
for sure. Yeah, if you can, and if you can find a good coach at that young age, like, stick with them because I think,
yeah,
a lot of times that's what you're looking for. And by the way, the bar for good coach in America is pretty low, right? Like,
yeah,
are you
right.
organized and do you not yell? Like those are the two things, right? That we need. But yeah, I think if you can find a good coach, that's good. But I think, yeah, I mean, if you're, I don't think you're going to go wrong trying to schlep your kid around to a few different tryouts, but I wouldn't get too, again, I wouldn't get too hot and bothered by it.
Yeah, I think that I agree wholeheartedly there, right? Yeah, don't get and that's from somebody who's been through it, and it's hard. There's a lot of life lessons that we as parents have to learn, right? I think with my second and third and probably fourth child, it will be a whole lot simpler to go through that process because I've been through it. But on that first kid, right, he or she is your golden child, and you're navigating it for the first time, so it can be a lot on you. So just try to take that pressure off and understand that it's a 10-year journey and not just the next 3 months or what have you. Yeah, I think that's good. You kind of touched on staying with a good coach, and I want to pull at that thread just a little bit because I think it's so important, right? Like um I I think that I think a good coach, like you said, the bar is pretty low. And I just want to add to that. A good coach should make your child love the sport that he or she is playing, right? That's my ultimate barometer. If my kid is having a great time and wants to go see Coach Greg, right, and is having fun with Coach Greg at that young and early age, whether or not like that your child's going to improve just naturally by being exposed to the sport, by more and more repetitions they're going to improve. And so developing that passion and love for the game and having a coach that is part of that journey, I think is vitally important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that like that the competitive spectrum is different. I mean, I used to think that, like, just having fun was all that matters. I mean, competition does matter, and it matters to some kids more than others. And so, every child's different in that respect. And then, as they age, sort of the competitiveness and the winningness of it, begins to play a part. But yeah, I think, if your kid's not, having fun, or gosh, we had a coach one time. He yelled and screamed at my kid, and here's the psychology of being a parent in America, is that, what that coach did? He won. I mean, we won a ton of games, right? And so, you really have to try to, as a parent, stand away and not get addicted to the winning. And really think about, what are these coaches doing, and what's that environment look like? And, is your child having a good time, and all that kind of stuff. Because it really does matter, and take it from somebody who has older kids. Like, I mean, the drop off at age 14 is real. I mean, in high school, it is real. I mean, they're going to stop playing the sport. So, if you can keep them engaged and having fun, that really helps your chances of them playing beyond the age of 14. And again, I think parents lose sight of that too often. And, the kids just get burnt out, or it's too competitive, or it's not fun, or they're doing too much of it. Right. I mean, that's the other problem we have in America, is that we've got kids doing, these sports year round, 4, 5, 6 days a week. Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, and it's hard, right? You get into it,
Right.
and, it's tough, right? It can, you sort of get stuck inside of this funnel, and it's hard to get out as a parent and as an athlete.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think that, again, that passion. A lot of people do drop off at 14. Now, I can only really speak from the boy perspective, because my oldest is a boy. Greg, I don't. You've got all boys, and so that's generally when most boys start hitting puberty, and so you really start separating those people who are going to be uber athletic and have put the time, energy, and effort in, from some of those who just maybe haven't developed.
Yeah, I think you see it on the girls' side too. I think it has a lot to do with the high school transition.
Okay.
I mean, that's my sense. I mean, yeah, I think it's puberty related, but I also think it's high school related. And when the kiddos go to high school, I mean, just things change. Usually for the better, to be honest. I mean, you're exposed to, right, a whole lot of stuff, and the priorities of everybody gets readjusted. And the truly passionate kids and the really high achieving athletes will continue to play, but a lot of them don't. And so it's kind of like, again, kind of have to ask yourself as a parent, if you knew today that no matter what you did, your son was going to stop playing baseball at age 15, would you approach it any different? And I think a lot of parents would. But of course, I think most parents think, well, that won't be us.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying?
We all have the next major leaguer,
Yeah.
Sleeping in our house, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. That's such
Sure.
it's an interesting comment that you had about your son and the tryout, and your heart was racing.
Sure.
What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Yeah,
If you
no, that's
truly
great.
reflect on that moment, what's happening in your head?
So there's a bit of a backstory there, a little bit of context, right? Like, it's not just I get worked up every time my son does a tryout. So the backstory is, and maybe we can talk about this later in this episode, or some other time, but I encourage my son, and we go to a bunch of tryouts, even if we have no intention of leaving the team that we're on. We go to a bunch of tryouts, because that's a repetition that you don't, that's a muscle that you don't get to flex that often. And so, and if they do play in high school, they're going to have to do a tryout every
Yeah.
single season. If they're lucky enough to go beyond high school and in college or semi-professional or whatever, they'll be doing a tryout. And in professionals, there's always a tryout. So
Can I
again,
add
getting
something to
comfortable with
that
that.
real fast? Can I just
Yeah,
add
sure. Go
something real
ahead.
fast? Because on the Facebook comment that you sent, we should put that comment maybe somewhere in this video, or put it in the notes so people know kind of what we're referring to. But the anonymous person says something about coaches and tryouts or whatever. Let me just say, from a coach's perspective, we don't care. You never look bad at a parent or a kid who comes to a tryout and doesn't end up going on your team. I mean, that we hold tryouts to hold tryouts. I mean, the more the merrier. So like, don't ever think from a parenting perspective that you're wasting a coach's time by going to a
Oh,
tryout. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
go. I mean, we don't care. If anything, tryouts are helpful if we have more kids there. And
Right.
quite frankly, it's helpful to have kids of all skill sets show up, because I need good kids to go up against good kids. And so if I can't put those together, then it can sometimes be a little bit harder to form a tryout. So even a high level kid that comes that's not going to end up playing for me, it's still a good use of time. And any coach who's like understands is that like it's a long-term game, right? So you may have a kid come at age 10 to your tryout. It's good, it's respectful, respect the parent, respect the kid, and who knows, 3-4 years later they could be showing back up to play for you.
Yeah.
So it all kind of takes time. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
just.
No, it's great. It's absolutely great. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so we do a lot of tryouts. And so I had a bunch on the agenda for this summer. July is hot and heavy for
Yeah.
baseball tryouts, and so my son and I identified like a program that he really wanted to be a part of. We had played one of their teams at a tournament, and they had beat us, and all the boys were just really into it. They were really excited. The boys on the other team, right? The team morale was high, and the team kind of environment seemed really positive. And so my son was just like, man, I would love to be on a team like that, Dad. And I said, okay. And so they have a club here, or a piece of the club, or whatever we're going to say, a division here in St. Louis, where I'm from. And so that was at the top of his list. We'd had lots of conversation of, hey, what are we going to do this next season? And we were about 90% sure we were going to stay with our current club, unless he got an offer from this one particular club. So I had, I was actually not really paying attention to him in the tryout, because he's done a bunch of them. I know what he looks like fielding a ground
And you're
ball, and
jibber jabbering with the parents. I know you. You're always
right. Yeah.
the mayor,
Just
shaking hands, kissing babies,
glad
making friends. Yeah.
right, exactly. And so anyway, I went up to talk to him after he had done kind of the infield drill, and then they got done pitching, and I was just chit chatting with him, and he goes, hey Dad, this coach over here, he told me, he asked me if I could hit very well. And I was, and a lot of times coaches at baseball tryouts will kind of walk up and talk up the kids that they're interested in. And so apparently this coach is doing that, right? So immediately my radar is kind of up, like, okay, so this coach is kind of interested in. But even in this club, there's like high level teams and like low level teams. And so uh and I asked my son, I said, well, what did you tell him? He goes, I can hit. And the coach says, can you really hit? And then my son goes, well, I hit 3 home runs last season. And I go, what did he say to that? And my son just said, I don't know. I turned and walked off. So just like in true 13-year-old,
Yeah.
fashion, is
Right.
just
Right.
out there pimping his skill. So anyway, so after that, the coach comes up. They're moving to the next kind of station, and again, he's just kind of chatting my son up, and I was standing there with him, and he says, "This your boy?" I said, "Yeah, it's my son." And we kind of joked about it. And he said, "Well, if he can hit, then we got a spot for him on our top team." So my son, wants to be with this club. There's several divisions of kind of like, I would say, difficulties or competition levels in baseball. This one would be like the highest competition level for him. So it would push him in that skill level. And so I'm a little nervous that he's going to make it. I'm a little nervous that he could also not make it, right? Because I want whatever he wants. And so then we go over these batting cages, and so they do what they call front toss, which is just a coach kind of lightly tossing the ball to the kids. And then in the second cage, they have a pitching machine. Now, the background that you have to know is that my son and I have tried many times to use a pitching machine, and it always ends up with him yelling at me for some for some
Right.
reason.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So in my heart, I'm going, oh crap! Like he's got to hit off this pitching machine. And
Yeah.
so he does just normal, like, we practice the front toss at, at home in our local cages. So he crushed it there, and then he gets in the batting cage, and that's when my heart started fluttering a little bit, right? Like, this is a moment where, just let me finish here if you don't mind. I'm like, I know this is something that he struggles with. I know he knows that he struggles with it. He did really good. He just has to kind of, like, this is the finish line I think he needs to cross. And so I was actually channeling my inner, coach, and I stepped back a little bit. A lot of times I will end up talking to him, and so I just kind of stepped back, and I even stepped out of the way so he couldn't see me, just to kind of
Yeah.
let him have his moment. And he rocked it, man. He rocked it, and he stepped up and he just knocked it out of the park, and he got an offer that day, which was really, really exciting. So in my heart, it's like, I want it. I know it seems about me, but it's about me in that I want him to be successful. I want him to get the thing that he wants.
Yeah.
Being on this team is actually harder for me because I have to drive a whole lot more. Like practices further away and stuff like that. So, but I wanted that for him because I knew that's what he wanted. So,
Yeah.
uh, so anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the what I was feeling there.
Yeah, no, I got it. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that, and congratulations to your boy. That's awesome. No, I think it's a great story. I think that a lot of people will relate to that story, and I think that is one of the difficulties of being a parent of youth athletics and sports is that we have this opportunity to be so involved with our children, which is good. I mean, it's good to be engaged dad. I mean, that's good.
Right.
But then, we also have a lot of understanding, right, of what they're going through. Like we've learned a lot, and they've shared a lot, and you've been part of that development. And so I think that becomes difficult, right, as a parent to be able to also step away, right? So that's good that you stepped away at that point, right? Because I think as coaches, what we really always look for are kids' abilities to like problem solve on their own and do this on their own, and you're always a little wary, not that you are, but in general, of that parent
Yeah.
who's like, too involved, right? Like when something happens, the child looks at the parent before they
Oh,
look
yeah.
at anybody else, right? That's the unhealthiness that you don't want to see. But yeah, it's a tough balancing act because ultimately, as parents, we do want what our kids want. And I think something to explore throughout this podcast is trying to understand how we as parents and coaches, how sometimes what's best for our children is not exactly what they want, and having those
Mm,
conversations with kids and helping them understand and think about what is best for them, right? Because sometimes
hmm
what they want is not always the best.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you say that, right? Before, and just using the current example to kind of walk through this particular team, he's going to have to work real hard to earn his spot. He's coming from a team where he legitimately just won an award for being the team MVP. And so he's going from the top dog, right? Somebody who everybody leaned on, to he has to now fit in with a new social circle, which is challenging for teenagers. And he has to perform, and there's no real history about, oh, no, like, he's just in a slump. We know how good he is, right?
All right.
So there's a bit of that, and one of the things that my son and I do is we talk a lot. We talk a lot about sports, and mostly when we're driving 5.5 hours to come to coach's house.
That's right.
So,
That's
that's right.
right.
So anyway, though, but I really pushed him in a lot of different ways to talk through this, to be like, hey, buddy, okay, so these are the challenges you're going to face on this new team. Are you sure you want to do this? This is how you're going to have to work. One of the things that kind of I like to turn a phrase every now and with him and just kind of blow his mind. And I said, what if I told you that everything that you've done, all the work that you put in up to now to get to this point in your baseball kind of career, that was the easy part? And he was like, oh my God, Dad, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
this is some next level stuff for him. And so I'm a little scared. I'm a little uneasy There's a part of me that says maybe we should have stayed with what we knew, but that's part of the growth and that's part of his journey as well. And so, I think that if this season turns out to be a disaster, um, the way we left our old team was actually, in my opinion, very honorable. Right, I made him call the coach. I made him have the conversation, and at the end of that, the coach was he respected his decision and even said to him, hey, if you ever need a team to play for, you can always play for me. So that gave me a little bit of, okay, like we're free to go try this. It may not work, and
Right.
to the 10-year kind of outlook, and that may be okay. This may
Yeah.
be a failure that he has to have, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and what I would say is that like it's playing at a super competitive level, if you progress, if your athlete progresses, you're always going to want to scratch that itch. It's sort of easy to be on this side of it and say like it's not all that it's cracked up to be. But that's because I've had the chance to experience it and coach
Right.
it, right? And so I think it's good, and I think you're approaching it the right way. And I think those are the conversations that you have to have, right? Like in a baseball term, imagine you only get to play every other game, and when you do, you're hitting ninth. You're hitting eighth. Is this still something you want to do?
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
those kind of, I think, expectations, I think for parents that's a big deal, right? It's just helping kids set expectations, especially at that age of 13 and 14, where they should start taking some ownership. I think that's great that you had them call the coach. I mean, that's we should never lose track of the fact that we can use sports to teach all sorts of things, right? And that's an example of where we can do that, right? We can make our children talk to adults, right? Like,
Right.
God, how many
And
kids do I hang out with and interact with who just cannot seem to hold a conversation with an adult, So I think that's good.
yeah, and that's one of the things kind of like in my line of work that we talk about sometimes is having tough conversations. Even adults will shy away from a tough conversation, giving bad
Yeah.
news or giving news that's disappointing. So, in the sports terms, we gotta find ways to flex that muscle. We gotta get those repetitions,
No
even on those
doubt.
things. So those are life lessons. I want to flip the script on you a little bit. We've been kind of chugging along here, and I really want to get coach's perspective on a tryout, right? As a parent, I'm going like I'm really like watching my kid, like watching the coach, like, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't have a bad day. I hope that he makes every play. I hope that he doesn't ever in soccer he doesn't lose the ball. He scores all the goals. What do you as a coach? I mean, you can't. I mean, some kids have bad days and they're great players. How do you as a coach look for that and navigate that during a tryout?
Yeah. Yeah. I've done, gosh, I wouldn't say 100 tryouts, but I mean, we've done a lot of tryouts for sure, through the years. And, yeah, I mean, the one thing I think I shared this before we started, but like, coaches, especially, those of us that are, at different times really in the trenches. I mean, we're doing tons of these. And so we're not giving nearly as much attention to all of this process as you think we should be or that we are. I mean,
What?
I know exactly, right? Like I remember, I mean, we would have these clipboards, and we actually had a director who was forcing us to use these clipboards, and it was so damn dumb. And so I mean, some of the stuff we wrote on these clipboards would probably would have gotten people fired. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's not, if you've done it a lot, I think coaches will tell you too, it's not super complicated. And so, like obviously, like your son, for example, I did just see him a couple of weeks ago. He's getting big. He's getting physical. He's athletic. You immediately, like, two drills, you're like, okay, that kid's athletic. So there, that's 85% right there, right? And so,
Yeah.
and then like with baseball or anything, soccer, golf, volleyball, like there are fundamentals, and coaches all coaches know the fundamentals, right? And so that's what you're looking for. You're not ever really looking for the result necessarily. You're mostly just looking like, do they have the fundamentals in order to push on? And so we can usually evaluate that super fast, super quick, right? I mean, within a few minutes of a rondo in soccer, I can tell you who the top players are. We haven't shot, we haven't played defense, we haven't done anything, but I can just tell by a player's mannerisms. I can tell by their foot skills. I can tell by their body positions. I can tell, relatively quickly, where kids are. And so I think that, if you're looking for two spots and you've got 10 kids there and you've got 10 of your own kids there, you're pretty quickly probably gotten it down to 3 or 4 that are going to be vying for those two spots. And so I think it's definitely something that it doesn't take, a whole lot into, and you're usually doing a whole bunch of other stuff. And so you're just like, okay, I'm moving on. I'm doing this. I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely not giving as much attention to it as you might think.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah.
You hit on something, and I just want to give the baseball kind of version of it. You said around a rondo, and I'm not familiar with that drill, but it sounds like a warm-up soccer drill.
Yeah.
I would assume.
Yeah.
Similarly in baseball, if your kid, warm-ups I think are very important. In baseball, the team that often can play catch the best is the team that wins the game. And that's the first thing anybody does, right?
Exactly.
From the time you step on the field or the ice or the court, you're getting evaluated, right? So your warm-ups are really important too. And a coach can, like you even said it, a coach can like kind of not necessarily count you out, but they can count you in real fast. You can get into the coach's eye. So it's real important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And as the kids get older, I definitely think you start to look for maturity, at tryouts, and you sure don't have time for kids screwing around. I can tell you that, no matter how
Right.
good they are, and so leadership and that kind of stuff starts to like, and that's just stuff that you can see. You can't really put like a number next to it, but just somebody who is, because that's ultimately who you want to coach, right? You want to coach those kids that are coachable, that are leaders, that are out front. And that's what you look at a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I something that, my wife would go to a tryout, and like at first for one of my kids who wasn't playing, and she'd say, by the end, he was playing with some of the kids that, weren't as good. Do you think that's good or bad? Or, the one thing I will tell you is that, tryouts are designed to, by the end of them, you want to get into groups of players based on skill. So if there's one thing you can take away from a tryout, it's this: if your kid is playing with all the really good kids, then your kid's being evaluated highly. And if your kid is not playing with all the good kids, they're not being evaluated highly. That's just the truth. That's just how it goes. That's just how it is. And so,
yeah,
I think the best thing that parents can do at a tryout is just drop their kids off and then come back and pick them up. I mean, ultimately you're just going to get yourself all flustered trying to figure out, did he make it? Did he not make it? Did he do it? Did he not do it? But I know that's really tough for a lot of parents, but ultimately I think kids that can just show up and play, and the less that they're sort of, dealing with their parents, and the more they're able to like problem solve on their own, whether that, that doesn't matter what sport it is, soccer, baseball, hockey, volleyball, right? I mean, if you can go out there and do it on your own, the better off that you are. But yeah, I mean, I think, from a coaching perspective, those are definitely things that we look at, is just like, are they mature? Are they ready to work? Are they coachable? That stuff really does matter.
Yeah, I would completely. I think I would describe my son, and you actually coached my son in soccer.
Yeah.
Well, I think he was like 9 or so. And I would describe him as a coachable kid, right? And I think that's really important. And those are oftentimes what I feel like the kids who have the most development is the ones that the coach can actually get through to,
Yeah.
the ones who listen. I mean, in baseball, we have kind of this, I have a batting coach, I have a pitching coach, I have a fielding coach, and I have my team coach, right? And sometimes those coaches can tell them different things, and they'll give like poor feedback, or they'll even kind of contradict each other. So I would say that having a kid that is coachable and listens and receptive is absolutely important, and because it makes your life as a coach a whole lot easier too, right?
Well, yeah, and here's what I'll tell you: 99% of the kids are coachable. Who's not coachable are the parents.
What?
A child, just as a child, is coachable. Like that,
Yeah,
it's the parents who fill their minds with all the garbage, right?
yeah,
About whether it's playing time or it's approaches or where they should be on the field. Most of the time, kids deal with that really, really well. And kids even deal with it not going well really, really well if you give them the chance to do that, if that makes
yeah,
sense. You know what I mean? So like if
yeah.
you're playing a kid at defense all the time, this just happened to me recently in soccer. I'm playing this kid at right back, right back, right back. I feel like that's the best place for him. It's right back, right back. He comes to me. It's like, I want to play up top, and I'm like, okay, well, see how this goes, and it turns out it was good. But you think about what that took for that young man to approach me and ask for some sort of, and like, and that's not taboo, by the way. Like, parents who are like, you got, like any coach should have an open relationship with kids. Kids should be able to talk back and forth. I can listen, you asked, I can answer. But I think that, having parents who are in there fighting those battles for the kids, that's what ends up like getting them all jacked up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because the kid then starts to think more about what dad's saying in the car ride home or what mom's saying about the other kids. And then that's the toxicity that gets into your team. If you can eliminate that, I think most kids are coachable. You know what I'm saying? I think it's the
yeah.
parents that kind of mess that up.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit that, I've messed that up many times in the past. And it comes through experience and learning and me realizing that life goes on outside of
Yeah.
baseball or soccer or whatever. And I think I told you this story whenever last time we hung out is I kind of was that parent for a while, right? Like on the car rides home probably weren't as fun as they could have been, early in the athletic career, but
What were you doing? What were you thinking?
right, right. Uh, and coming, and he must have been looking at me because I didn't play baseball, so like he's probably like, "Dad, you don't know what you're talking about, right?"
Yeah.
And so the point whenever I step back, right, whenever I started having more, I would say like Q&A with him, right, of well, like how did it go? Oh, I think I did okay, and me just going, yeah, you did. And because if they went out there and they competed, doesn't matter if they went 0 for 5, right? Because the next game they can hit a home run or they could score a
Yeah.
goal. And I think that where I'm getting to here is once I started actually with positive reinforcement around the sport, he really started to flourish. He started to kind of take off and really enjoy it because no matter what he did on the field, he was receiving positive reinforcement from me. And I think that, that made him fall in love with it. My other
Yeah.
kids too. I talk a lot about Elliot, but yeah,
Yeah. And the
so
other thing, like from a parent perspective, I mean, obviously positive is better than negative, but nothing is great.
yeah, negative, neutral. It's like it's
Neutral's
neutrally good,
fantastic, I
right?
mean, so like there's nothing wrong with just getting in the car and just not talking about it at all.
Yeah.
Your kids, I think, appreciate that, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've heard several coaches and dads. The 20. You probably heard of the 24-hour rule on an email, right? Like you don't want to send a hot email. You just type it up and then you let it sit and you come back 24 hours later. Same
Yep.
thing with your kid, right?
Right.
Write down all the things you want to say to him or her, and then let it sit for 24 hours and see if you still feel that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully you won't.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, it's hard. I'm not going to pretend like
Oh
I'm
yeah,
perfect. It's hard. The other thing I would say, this is another topic for another episode is like I encourage people to go coach.
oh
It's
yeah,
so easy to be on the sidelines. Good, but go coach, go try to do the other side of it. Cause hopefully I think if we had more parents coaching, or just even involved in some way, I think that would help give some perspective, because it's hard. Obviously, it's hard to manage the kids. It's hard to manage the team. It's hard to think about the organization while also teaching and coaching and trying to get
Yeah.
kids better. And then competitive sports in America then also means that you're going to put a lot of work into a kid, and then that kid's going to leave, and that's really hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, we've done that. But that, I think it's unfortunate. It's kind of part of it. I
it's
think that you can do it in a good way, though. You don't have to burn your bridge,
Well,
you
for
know.
sure. And what let me just say, for the maturation of a coach, is at first that really hurts. It really stings. And it takes a while to get over that. The next level, though, of coaching is when you begin to recognize that that's actually beautiful. Like that says more about you as a coach than anything ever will be said, but it's hard because you put all this time and effort into a kid, and then he goes on to somewhere else.
Right.
He or she goes on to somewhere else. But I think over time you start to recognize that you're just little pieces along the development of these kids. And if you're able to impart some positivity, whether it's a whole bunch or a little bit, that's all right. That's your role as a coach, but it's hard. It's hard to develop that kind of presence of mind,
Yeah. Yeah, I think also I would agree with you. I did coach a little bit when my kids were little. I realized very quickly that it's very hard. It's very challenging, and it's also, I don't have a passion for coaching other people's kids. And so, I love my kids. I mean, I love other people's kids, all my little kids' friends and stuff like that. And in fact, most of the teams were made up of, the one that I coached the longest was my daughter. She's 8 now, and she had a little team, and I knew all the girls on the team. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't that I didn't like them or love them. I just realized that it was harder. It was hard for me to do, and it did help me get a lot of perspective for the coaches. And just trying to step back and not have such a just a why are you not looking out for my kid type attitude. I feel like we as parents are always like, why is my kid not number one? Why? Well, because I have 10 other kids on this team, or I have
Yeah.
13 other kids on this team I'm trying to manage, and I forgot about Billy, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it happens.
Oh yeah. 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 No, that's totally, being organized is the most important thing to coaching, especially at the youngest levels, right? And anything you can do to give yourself organization, like, gosh, even bringing somebody on to the best thing you could do as a youth athletic coach is bring somebody on the bench whose only job is help you manage playing time.
Oh, right.
I would say 8 out of 10 issues you have is around playing time. And so as a coach, it's hard. You're trying to coach. And of course, baseball is a little bit different, because it's boring, but I didn't say that. I didn't mean that. No. But some of the other sports, where we have basketball, hockey, soccer.
It's safe to say that Greg is
sports that actually, you have to actually move.
Oh man!
But
I'll make sure to tell my son you said that. Right?
But for real though, if you can get somebody who can just help you manage, right, that playing time, because I think at the youth level, like, that's what's hard, right? Like, how many minutes have people played? And if you're out there solo trying to bring people in and out while also adjusting or trying to coach or whatever, and then at the end, parents rightfully can get frustrated, right? If you're in a rec environment and everyone's supposed to play, and you're not, and you're favoring one kid over the other, or even in a competitive nature where you've told parents ahead of time that kids might not play, but these are still the minutes that I'm hoping to get them in. Either way, it's easy to get lost. And then if you've got somebody there who can help you manage minutes, I think that's helpful. So
yeah, I would agree. Okay.
We covered a lot in this in episode 1, Steve-O.
I know that was quite a bit. I think we really tried to focus on tryouts. I think that's really, again, that's the funnel into a lot of these sports. We probably didn't answer a lot of questions. I think if you have any questions for Greg and I, happy to put it in comments. I'm sure some of those comments are not going to be very nice, but whatever. But I mean, who are we, right? We're just two dads who have
That's
kids,
right.
and we're just trying to navigate this process with our kids at the same time, right? Like,
exactly.
you have a different view as being a coach, which I think is invaluable. I think you helped me a lot along my journey as being a parent of an athlete. Your advice a lot of times is step back and make sure to gain perspective. You know, uh, this season isn't the only season that you're going to play. So those are some of the lessons that I've learned from you over the years. And I think that hopefully this podcast, we can just, spread that message a little bit wider and let people just gain some more perspective and hopefully, I think the end result, I think that would be beautiful is if a couple kids have a better time playing competitive sports in America. I think this will be a success. So
Yeah. And, that note, the fact that note, that mom or dad, I can't remember if we know who it was, but he or she said that, they were so stressed out. And it's like, if there's one thing we can also try to do is I'd love to try to de-stress American athletic parents. Like, we're not curing
Right.
cancer, like how many times do I have to say that? Like, I have to say that as a coach, to everybody, like the refs and
Right.
the kids and everybody, right?
Right.
Like, hey, we're not curing cancer today. We're just playing youth sports, and I think, and we've all been there. We've all been there. So like, we get it, and it's not easy, but yeah, if we can give some perspective, try to bring down the temperature of youth athletics in America, de-stress, try to have a little bit more fun, give some perspective. I think it's worth our time.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'll say is, just to kind of put a bow on what you said there is I think if that happens, your kids are still going to develop. They're still going to get good. They're still going to get great. And in fact, they'll probably develop faster.
Yeah, no doubt. Right. Ultimately, yeah, because the more positive the environment is that your athlete lives and breathes and hangs out in, the more they're going to enjoy it. No doubt about it. So
awesome. All right, Greg. I think it's a great first episode, man.
I mean, it's only going to get better from here.
Right. I think I need to get something for back here.
You do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just get like something big baseball related so that you have to stare at it.
I hope we can explore how baseball parents get to talk to their kids for the whole game. That's awesome. Yeah.
Maybe that's a future episode.
So you got to save it now. You got to save it now. But yes, right. I mean, I'm going to give you trouble for a while. Like, yeah, it's the sixth inning. Come on over, buddy. Let's talk about how are things?
That may happen a lot. I think that I have a graphic I'll send you later that you'll get a pretty good kick out of, which is like the different spots around a baseball field and what the parents are like the dads who used to coach are in right field, the dads filling their cup like are in left field, right? Just like all the parents and where they stand. So it's pretty accurate. But
yeah, that's right on. All
right, buddy. Excellent. Well, this has been great. All right. So I think maybe, in the next episode, I think we talked about maybe talking about refs.
Yeah,
that's a really big.
Yes,
I think you hit the point earlier about step in the shoes of a coach for a day. I think we could probably say the same thing for a ref.
Yeah.
So maybe
let's do reffing. Let's definitely do umpire / reffing in our next episode. Let's
awesome.
Let's chat about it.
Awesome, great. Well, thanks, Greg. It's been great. We'll talk soon, brother.
Awesome.